Hey guys, welcome back to the Out Jeeping YouTube channel. In today's video, it's going to be a little bit different style, not necessarily how-to, but I'm going to be kind of doing a project update on my 1978 Jeep J10 and show you guys what I've been doing off camera and get you up to speed on what's all going on. While we're at it, we're going to knock out the taillights and get them working today. I believe the last time you guys saw this was finishing up the rear suspension, and there's a lot that's happened since then. So we'll do a quick overview on what I've all finished up on this, and then we're going to go over to the taillights, and then I guess just put those together, and hopefully by the end of this video we have working taillights. Alright, so first thing you guys might notice is that we finally got the bed back on here from doing that frame off restoration basically in the rear here. Just went and put some new bushings in between the bed right here and the frame, so that's why it looks like it's all jacked up and everything, but it actually really reveals how rotted and shot the body mounts are underneath the cab. It's pretty much, you know, sunk down here in the corner, so that's why it's drooping a little bit and the body lines are like over an inch off on the driver's side here, but the bed is actually where it should be at. Along with that, I went and also got the fuel system all plumbed and finished up earlier this year. I went and got a new BJ's off-road poly tank and installed that here since my old one was rusted out, and that's what's in this bed right here. Still have to get that scrapped. Got all new lines going up to the engine, up to the carburetor, new fuel filter, so everything is pretty much brand new in the fuel system. Don't have to worry about any rust or anything like that clogging it up. So taking a look underneath the rig here, as you can see, this is our new poly tank with some new straps. Got some new lines going up to our filler neck, and then I have our feed and return lines going all along the frame rail here up to the engine. And we got a brand new brake line, and then we got a brand new wiring harness for the rear that I recently built for all of our rear lights and sending unit for the fuel tank right here. It was a pain in the butt to get this tank installed because this actually bolts to the bed and not the frame, and the bed supports were all rotted out, and once I started tightening this up there was a lot of gap in between there, so I basically had to rebuild some mounts for the bed so it dropped down a little bit, so that way these tank straps actually tightened up and hold this thing nice and solid. So that's all buttoned up now and looks pretty good. I will eventually in the future get to this mid frame underneath the cab right here once I start fixing the floors and everything for the cab. Now coming over to the exhaust, you guys might notice that this looks a little familiar. This is actually the thrush muffler that used to be on my XJ. It was fairly rotted, but still enough meat to actually clamp onto here. So this is kind of a temporary setup on here until I fully redo the exhaust. The existing muffler that was on here is kind of rotted and everything like that. Didn't sound too good, so I threw that on there along with a little bit of an extension on there and just a downturn, so that way the exhaust is kind of directed downwards and not straight backward to where it's going to melt the wiring harness that goes to the back cross member. And then along with that, I did a little patch job right here. This was all rotted out and had a huge exhaust leak that was blowing just directly onto that fuel line and wiring harness, and actually melted it a little bit. So just patched that up temporary for now. Works pretty good. Before they had some sort of farmer's patch job by taking a tin can with a couple hose clamps to fix that, and that's since too rotted as well, so that's going to hold up a little bit longer until I get a full exhaust on this vehicle. Another thing you guys might notice is we got some brand new tires right here in the bed. These are some 33-inch Falcon Wild Peak all-terrains, same one I'm running on my Jeep Cherokee XJ and on my last truck. I love these tires, they do great. So I just got these new tires that showed up. I have also ordered some new wheels, which you guys will see once we mount them, but currently they're on back order, so who knows when those will show up. I was hoping to get that all mounted up here soon because it's really going to transform the look of this 100%, especially with that lift that we installed. Well, other than that, not a whole lot has been going on. I have started ordering more parts like window regulators and things like that because there's a bunch of miscellaneous broken stuff on this Jeep that still needs to get fixed. The next project that we're taking care of and that we're going to continue and finish up hopefully today is getting the rear taillights all done. Basically I had to build a brand new wiring harness all the way up from the firewall going all the way back for the rear frame. I got most of that all pretty much done and have pigtails coming off the end where our taillights are, so we just have to build a little harness and get all of our new lights installed. which I got some new tail lights that are going in today and side markers as well. But other than that, let's go over to the workbench and take a look at the tail light parts that we're going to be installing today. Alright, so this is what we got all available to get our tail lights working. So the original lights that were on here, all the lenses were pretty much smashed up, and the housing on the passenger side is all bent up, as you can see right here. Probably hit a tree or something, so that's not going to work. These are aluminum, and they actually are kind of hard to come by. I did find a set on eBay for 50 bucks just for the housings, and that's what's right here. The left one's in great shape, just like how my original left one was. The right one, it's a little bit more corroded, and I was in the process of actually pulling out these light sockets since we're going to be installing new ones, and it actually kind of blew out a hole a little bit bigger than I thought. So I'm going to have to figure out something to fix that because this aluminum kind of corroded. I was going to take these and get media blasted and coated, which I still am, but I'm going to have to figure out a way to do this onto the passenger side. But for now, we're going to worry about the left side, the driver's side, get that all going because we got two good housings that we're going to use. But like I said earlier, we're going to put new sockets in here, and the original sockets, they're kind of like pressed into here, so you have to kind of pry and crimp them out, and they basically just get destroyed when you remove them. But they're all rusty and everything like that, and the wires that come off them, they're just like so dry rotted and cracked and everything like that. So I really wanted to start fresh since I'm building a brand new harness all the way to the rear anyway. So that's where I found these guys on, I think it's Parts Dude 4x4. I think they were like $5 a piece. These are new light sockets that are going to work for this. They got a 2-pin and single pin. And the way that these work is they have these little tabs on here. So once you stick them in through here, you might need to pry them in a little bit, but once they pop all the way through, you're going to have the fingers or the tabs that stick through, and then you're just basically going to peel them out, and they're going to expand and basically hold into there. And you also want that to be a nice ground connection too, because that's where your ground is going to be for your lights. So that's what we got going on. We got 2 of them for each tail light, because a single pin is going to be for a reverse light, and a double pin is going to be for our stop, turn, and brake. Now let's talk about lenses real quick. These were the original ones. Passenger side, it's all cracked and everything like that. So I went on BJ's Off-Road, which is probably the largest full-size Jeep parts website available out there. And they had some taillight lenses you could purchase. So I got a 2-pack for 75 bucks, and they actually do look fairly nice. They're brand new. They came with gaskets and the original hardware too, so it's going to be looking pretty fresh once we get that on there. Then I also went and got some new side markers for the rear as well. I got side markers for the front, and actually I already installed them onto the Jeep, so that's going to look good. And then along with that, we also have some new side marker light sockets that we're going to wire into as well. They're fairly cheap. They only run about $5. You may notice there's another set of tail light lenses over here. That's because the day that this showed up, the day after, I actually went to a junkyard looking for lawnmower parts, and actually found a bunch of old Jeep stuff, and was able to actually find some J10 lenses right here for actually only $5 a piece. So technically could return that, but I could also save these as a spare, clean them up, or just sell them. So it's always good to have an extra pair, especially for how rare parts are to find for this Jeep. And then of course I do have some light bulbs. They're over in the drawer over there, but you're going to need like 1156, 1157 bulbs to go in the taillight housings right here, and I think they're the small 194s that go for the side markers. But I got some brand new bulbs that are going to go here as well. So yeah, next thing we're going to go over to the Jeep and just take a look at what we got going on with the existing wiring harness that I previously made, and then we'll kind of build off of that and hopefully start installing some of these lights. Alright, so now on to the back of the Jeep, and over here, as you can see, this is where our driver's tail light's going to go. On the side over here, the bed, that's where our side marker is going to go. And down here, this is the new wiring harness that I made, so everything's going to plug in nicely. And when I like to do wiring on vehicles, I like to make it just as good as factory, if not better. In this case, it's pretty much better than factory with all the crappy connectors and stuff they had on there before. But each side, we're going to have 2 plugs right here. We got a 4-prong and a 2-prong. 4-prong is going to go to our main tail light, and then the 2-prong is just going to go to our side marker over here. And that's just basically our running light. So we got running light power, ground, and over here we got running, we got stop, turn, which utilize the same wire, and then we also have reverse. So what we need to do is actually just make an extension off of here that actually is going to plug into our lights. So we're going to be making the other side of this wiring harness So we're going to have the Deutsch connectors coming off of here. So I'll show you guys how to do that. I did show that in one of my other videos on the fog lights for the XJ, but I'll go over it again. But as far as these Deutsch connectors, a lot of people kind of think they're overly complicated and everything like that, but they're actually really simple. The only investment you need to do is to buy them and to buy a crimper, which could be like 10 bucks from Amazon. That's the one that I'm using and I've had no flaws with at all. However, these are a little bit more pricier, obviously. I think 25 bucks got me 5 pairs of these, so 5 total connections. So you're gonna have 10 pieces, and then you have all the pins that go into there. But once you get that pin crimped onto the wire, all you gotta do is snap them in here, and you put the wedge in once all of them are in, and then that's pretty much it, and this thing is nice and solid. I did want to show the back side of this wiring harness. So it comes all the way from the firewall coming back over here, and then kind of starts splitting off. This is where our main ground is for all of our lights. I split them up for basically each side. I also built this wiring harness that way you can plug in a 4-way trailer harness as well. So that's what this plug is right here. This is basically just giving signal, and then there's going to be another attachment here that's going to go to your 4-way. Also made another plug over here. If I do end up having a license plate light, that's another running light right there. So I do have that option available, but just left that all tucked up behind here for now. And then down here, this is where, once again, our 2 plugs are for our driver's side, and then coming over here, we have our passenger side. Same thing, same exact 2 plugs over here. So hopefully now you guys are kind of up to speed on the wiring harness situation. So I'm going to get some supplies, then we're going to start building the wiring harness for these taillights and get them installed. Alright, so I'm going to start off on the easy one, and that's actually just making the side marker little pigtail harness. So we got our new bulb socket right here that goes into our side marker, and then just basically has a few inches of wire off of here. I'm going to make it a little bit longer, probably add another 6 inches of wire. So just going to extend the wires off of it. I believe what's on here is like a 16 gauge wire, but all the wire I got in all different colors is, I decided to go with 14 gauge, which should be fine. One thing you want to look for in copper wire is to get actually high quality wire. I've been getting stuff from Amazon before and actually found it to be complete junk. Even though you get all these different color 100-foot rolls for a fairly decent price, it's actually not good copper. What I found out, I've actually had to redo some other wiring projects because if any water gets in it, I've noticed it just immediately corrodes and deteriorates. So I went on Granger actually and got some good USA made wire right here. So this stuff should last a lot longer. So first thing I did with this is just basically to offset where our connections are going to be. I'm going to end up actually just soldering an extension wire because I have a little bit extra time and I want to do it right. So I'm just going to solder this, and since I will be putting wire loom over this, having 2 connections in the same spot sometimes makes that wire loom kind of expand and won't all fit inside. So I'm going to try this out, just space them out a little bit where our connections are, and then hopefully everything should be good. As far as wire loom, I think this is 1/4 inch. That's what we're going to be using for just this 2-strand wire right here to make it all look nice. So I'm going to get this all prepped. I'm going to strip this down. And everyone's got their own way of how they want to connect wires. I just recommend not using cheap splice connectors or anything like that because they are guaranteed to fail once they get any sort of moisture in there. If I have some time, I like to solder and then use heat shrink over that. So that's what we're going to be doing today. Well, technically I can just cut this to length and do the heat shrink after, but if you're in a spot where you're connecting something and you can't slip on heat shrink, make sure you do that before you start soldering things together. So what I had over here is just black and white. That's on the harness that I built, but on this pigtail it's black and brown, so I'm just going to do black to black and white to brown. Shouldn't really matter on the polarity for a side marker like this. Just going to twist that together and start soldering this together. Alright, so I got both little soldered on there. Just going to let out a little bit of length. And I think that's probably good. It's better to be a little bit longer in your wiring than too short. You can always bunch it up and zip tie it compared to not having enough to reach where you need to go. Solder connections are nice and strong. They don't have to be pretty. It's not a weld. All it needs to do is just penetrate two wires together, make a connection. So I'll put our heat shrink on now. Then we'll take our heat gun, which this thing is the best invention since sliced bread, is having this little curve on here. It's meant for doing heat shrink like this. Now the next fun part is installing our Deutsch connector. So what we got, it's basically just a few components. We have our pins that are going to be crimped onto our wires. We got our waterproof connector. This style Deutsch connector uses individual ones like this, and then we got our male connector right here, which is going to correspond with the female connector that I put on the other side of the wiring that it's going to plug into. Now for this application, polarity doesn't matter as far as which side this goes on, since it's just an incandescent bulb that can flip both ways. But just to make everything nice and neat, I am going to take a look at the other wiring harness, see which side's white and black, and then just match that up when I do the final connection. I'm just going to strip these out first. Not too much on these, probably around 5/16. On this side of the Deutsch connector, I'm going to have to use these pins compared to the sockets style ones that are on the other side of the connector. So actually, the first thing we got to do is put on our waterproof connector. Then these are the cheap $10 crimpers I got off Amazon. They work flawlessly. So I'm going to line it up with our 14 gauge wire that I'm using right here. Push it in, make the initial crimp. And once it crimps around the wire, kind of push up that waterproof seal, and then we're going to do our seal crimp. And that guy's ready to get installed into the plug. I'll do this side real quick. Alright, so both these are on, and all we got to do is actually take off this back section of the connector right here. Kind of clips over. Fold that back. And looking over here on the plug, that's going to go in that way, so I'm going to stick the white right here to match that up. And just push this in until it clicks. And it's locked in. Sometimes that waterproof seal kind of sticks out, and take something, just kind of jam it in there, make sure it's nice and tight. There we go. And just take that back piece and clip that on. Now, last thing I gotta do is just add some wire loom. Now this is where having that offset connection's gonna help, because it's a little bit thicker, especially if you use like a buck connector. They're a lot thicker, and trying to get two buck connectors side by side inside a split loom, it's a little bit difficult. Let's get it towards the end. We'll just snip this. Alright, and I like to take a little bit of electrical tape on either end, that way the wire loom kind of stays on there. Alright, there we have it. Just got electrical tape on either end and one's in the middle, and that's our little connector for our side marker. That's going to work perfect. Now the reason why I have a connector and not just have it straight up wired to the light right here is because I want to make sure that if this bed does ever come off again, which it probably will, all you have to do is just quickly disconnect where our electrical connectors are and still leave all the lights into place and not have to mess with taking those apart. So I do have to make another one exactly like this for the other side, so I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then we'll go over to the taillights and start actually installing those sockets into our taillight housing, get that all situated, and then make a little wiring harness for that. Then we can start plugging stuff in and see if stuff lights up. Alright, so with those two pigtails made, what I'm working on right now is actually putting these new sockets inside of this housing. And it's a little bit tricky. The tabs at first, for the hole, they're like too small, so I had to really kind of push them in a lot so they would fit through the hole. I didn't feel like drumming it out too much, but I was able to get it through and kind of poked them in. And then at first I was using a needle and those pliers to kind of one by one push them out, which worked a little bit, but I ended up kind of scratching this coating, which I really don't want to do. So to do it the rest of the way, I'm just taking a flathead screwdriver and gently hammering these little tabs so they bend on the inside, and that secures this light socket nice and securely. So I'm going to finish doing that here. Should be fairly sealed, but I might take a little bit of RTV. Just kind of go around the back here because I don't want any water to get inside of here. I also went and kind of removed the old gasket. I'll still have to clean it up a little bit so it's nice and clean for that new one to sit down in there. I'll take some acetone, probably clean that up a little bit. But I'll get this other guy in, and then we can start building this other wiring harness for this taillight right here. Alright, so a little update. I got this all cleaned up and got both of the sockets installed on here. And as you can see, we just got one wire coming where our reverse light is. That's just going to be a simple positive for our reverse light. And then we got two over here for our running light, and then our brake and turn signal is going to utilize the other one. So that's going to be 3 wires right there, but if you recall, it's a 4-prong connector. So I'm actually having a ground run to it. Technically, this whole brake light housing is going to be grounded onto the truck and should theoretically work fine, but I'm just going to take that ground wire and actually just ground it directly to one of the bolts that mounts this tail light housing on here. So that's what I'm going to be doing, just taking an eyelet and grounding it on the back side right here, so that way it gets a nice ground connection there. But I'm going to extend these wires out a little bit, just like before, probably another 6 inches, and use the correct color code that's going to match to what I was using before. So we just got white, yellow, blue, and black. That's what I decided to do here. It's going to be a little bit different colors to what the original truck's wiring diagram is, but I wasn't able to locate any striped wiring right now to be exact match. But as long as I know what's going on, it should be good. So same thing as before, just going to strip these out, and we're going to solder the extensions onto here. The way that I'm doing it is I'm having the running lights as the white wire. So I'm going to attach it to either one. On this one, doesn't really matter, since there's going to be 2 filaments in these bulbs. We can do either or. And then yellow is going to be our brake and turn signal. So I'm going to hook it up to the other side on this one, and then blue is our reverse lights. And I'll just solder these in. Alright, got those few soldered on. I'm going to get this the length I want. Now these guys are ready for putting on our special connector for the Dodge connector. A little bit different on this style one. It has that gray plug on there. It has the weather seal all in the back here as one unit, so all we got to do is just push it through so we don't have the individual ones. So all we got to do is just crimp on our new connector. Alright, got all of our pins on. Now we're just going to push these in, correct position where it's going to correspond with other plug. Then these should click in just like the last one. Then once they're all in, you got this little wedge that goes down inside the connector in here. This is what you push in, and then it locks everything into place. go. All nice and solid. Just need to cut my black wire to where I'm going to mount it on here for grounding this taillight housing. Put a piece of heat shrink down here first, and then I'm just using a typical ring terminal for this, typical crimp-on one. So that's pretty much it there. I'm going to get this all buttoned up with some loom and make it nice and pretty. Then we'll be back to pretty much get this ready to be installed. Alright, now comes the fun part. We get to put on our new lenses. I ran our side marker harness up to here. It's clipped into the main harness below. Now push this in and rotate it. That's locked in. Then we got our 2 screws to screw this in. It's looking good. We can test it out real quick. Alright, so our tail housing is all ready to go. I went and just put some RTV in the back there and make sure it's 100% sealed up. And when I install this, I got our ground right here. That's going to be grounded on the bolt that goes through here to the body. So I'm going to make sure I stick that through. Originally had some torque screws. I'm going to swap them out with just normal 7/16 head 1/4 inch bolts. They're going to be the same thread on this. So feed in our wire and bolt this on first, and then we can plug it in after. Swap this bolt out and hope that ground stays put. Alright, so that's tightened down. Now we're ready to put the lens on. We got our new gasket right here. We're going to fit that into the grooves. Stick our new lens on and feed in our new hardware. That's looking pretty good. I think I still need to adjust the tabs that hold the mount in, because it's kind of sticking out a little bit and it should be recessed in a little bit more. But for now, that's pretty good. Alright, so everything's all hooked up here on this driver's side taillight. Got that buttoned up and got this as straight as I can. There is a dent right here which kind of pushed it in, which makes it not totally recessed all the way around, but that's the best it's going to do with this bed right here. So I'm going to try it out, make sure everything works real quick, and then we can jump onto the other side. There we got running lights. That seems to work good. Try brake. There we go. Flasher's a little bit slow on this side, but we can always swap out that flasher to get a new one. And last thing we gotta do, we'll just test out this reverse light. Look at that, everything's working perfectly. Alright, so with this side all buttoned up, I went and actually started on the passenger side, trying to utilize the best housing that I could do. Ended up having to put a plate in the back and drill a hole and then JB weld that into place. So that's drying right now, but what we can do is shift gears a little bit, and I got a couple of U-joints we need to install on this rear drive shaft. I noticed they're not in the best condition when I rebuilt that rear axle here last summer, so we're going to go and pull the drive shaft quick and swap out a couple of U-joints, and by then our JB weld should be all nice and cured. Alright, so I got the wheels chalked off so this thing don't run me over, and these have U-joint straps on here. So taking a 1/2 inch, we'll break these free.
Alright, I'll just pull this guy back, hopefully. Might need to get something to pry in there quick. There we go. Ooh, that cap came out. There we go. Ooh, needle bearing's already fallen out. Just stick that back on and we'll get this out from underneath of here.
So as far as replacing U-joints, we're going to be replacing it with this Spicer original Dana part right here. I like to do the ones without the greaser since they're a little bit stronger, and if they last 200,000 miles without getting grease, then they should be fine on the grease that's built in here. These ones that are in here that have a greaser already in there, so could be original, could have been replaced before, but the main reason I'm replacing them today is because you can see on this bearing surface right here, there's a bunch of grooves dug in here from all those needle bearings. So that's what I noticed before when I put this back together last summer. So that's why we're going to replace them today. I'm going to do them on either side of the shaft. So first thing we got to do is get those clips out. Just taking a needle nose plier and maybe a pick and a hammer, trying to get that all out of here. Then we'll pound these out. Gonna wear some safety glasses because these guys sometimes like to go flying because sometimes they do break, and you don't want that going towards your eyes. Oh, that was actually pretty easy. So one side's broke, the other side's not. I like to just hammer it, and it breaks that surface tension free. I can take it out. Then we'll take some crappy sockets we don't care about and hammer these guys out. There we go. That one wasn't too bad. I've had a lot of them, a lot more struggle to get them out, but I'll get this all cleaned up and then we can pop in the new one. And I usually put a little bit of grease in here just to kind of help guide it along. Then we got our new clips, we'll pop those guys in. It's one side, and then we'll pound it back the other way so it bottoms out on that clip. And once it's all in, notice it's a little tight, so a little trick you can do, just tap on the yoke and it kind of shocks the whole thing and will make it so it moves freely.
There we go. That guy's all done. Do the same thing on the other side. Same process. There we go. As smooth as butter. It's all ready to go back in. Once we bolt it back in, we'll hit that grease zerk right here for our slip joint. Tighten this up a little bit, and then we'll get the other side in. This back one, you got to put the straps on at the same time you're pushing that U-joint into the yoke, because there's not enough clearance for it to get out of there, so that's what I did there. There we go. Pop that on that side, and we'll get this guy all tightened up. Now for the fun part, you got to grease this joint. Some people don't know, but there's a weep hole right here in this yoke, and once this is filled with grease in the slip joint right here, it's going to start weeping out some grease in that weep hole. That's when you know when you're done filling it up. There's a little bit that shot out when I fully retracted this because it pushed all the grease out, but we're going to stick some more in there. There we go. Oozing out the front there. At first it wasn't taking any grease. You can take an ice pick to it and kind of work that ball and seat valve, and that'll kind of help free up if there's any debris in there. If it's not too rusted, then it should be able to take some grease, so that worked out perfect here. There we go. That's one less project off the list. Now let's go back to the taillights and finish up that passenger side. So back working here on the taillight, over here on the passenger side taillight housing, this is the best one that I have currently, and what I ended up doing with this hole over here, since it was so corroded, I think this is like cast aluminum that's on there, I ended up actually just taking a chunk of 1/8 inch aluminum, putting it back here, drilled a hole, and then I actually JB welded this all into place and JB welded the socket in there, and it's actually pretty nice and strong. Now over on this light socket, I was still able to put it in the way I did like the other side by bending in these tabs on the inside, but it was still a little bit loose, so I had some leftover JB weld and I just JB welded that guy into place, and then also kind of took a paintbrush, went over all the corroded areas over here. I did have this one media blasted, so it took off all the corrosion on the back here and was a little bit bumpy, so I took the leftover JB weld and kind of smoothed everything out, and then hopefully this is a lot stronger by having that on there. I did have a crack right here, and that blew out a chunk. Nothing much I can do right now with that. It won't be 100% sealed. I might take some RTV and seal up the lens right there, but we'll see how it goes until I get a better replacement. But for now, this should work just fine. So I'm going to continue and build this little harness right here, just like how we did the other side. Pretty much the same exact thing, just a different colored wire on this side for that turn signal, but should be the same exact process. Alright, our harness is all complete. Got our ground right here that will slip on when we put that bolt on, so it's grounded to our taillight housing. I'm just going to fish our wire through. Now this end of the bed got pretty banged up. It's all dented in here, so this is not going to sit perfect like factory, but it's still going to be better than what it was on not having taillights at all. So we're just going to do the best we can to make things functional here.
And I am just replacing these bolts right here with just normal 1/4 inch ones, since the original ones were Torx and I don't trust the original ones anymore, because if those get rusty anymore, they're gonna strip out and then it's gonna be a really bad day once I take these off again. We got our new gasket, we'll stick that in here. Now for the lens. Alright, our taillights are all finished up finally after a long process of wiring. Now let's go do a final test and make sure everything works. Alright, looks like everything's working pretty good. That's another big project knocked off the list for sure. So we're going to keep moving forward on this thing, keep knocking things off the list until we get this thing cruising down the road and actually enjoy it a little bit with all the hard work that we put into it. So before we end this video, I do want to mention today's video sponsor, and that's by Oria Auto. And they make a variety of floor liners for many vehicles out there. Now today we're going to be featuring on a 2020 Jeep Grand Cherokee, and they will definitely help protect the interior of your vehicle from all the elements that you bring in from your shoes. And all you have to do to clean them is just simply remove them and spray them off with a garden hose, and they'll be looking fresh again to throw right back in. Definitely a superior solution to carpet floor mats. So if you guys want to get yourself one of these, I'll leave a link down below so you can check it out and get a set for your vehicle. I want to thank Oria Auto for sending these out for me to take a look at today. Definitely high quality compared to WeatherTech's and a fraction of the price. So make sure you guys check out the link down below. So let's get back to the video. Alright guys, that's going to be a wrap for today's video. As we saw, all the lights are working perfect. That was the main goal for this video, is to get everything working back here with all the electrical. It took me a few weeks to get all the parts and wiring and all the connectors and everything like that gathered up here so I can do this job and complete it, but I'm so happy it's finally done. So now it's pretty much legal as far as lights go, so that's a big thing knocked off the list and one step closer to getting this thing back on the road. So hopefully you guys like this video. It's a little bit different than this traditional how-to video. It's more kind of like vlog style. I'm doing project updates and kind of working through something, not necessarily step by step. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. If you guys want to help support the channel, head over to the Outjeeping Etsy store. I'll leave that link down below if you guys want to help support the channel. Make sure to like and subscribe to the Outjeeping YouTube channel to help keep the content coming. I want to thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you guys in the next video.